Good morning, everybody. We're live for our first ever virtual Visible Green Home Tour of Burbeck at Beacon Springs Farms. And we have Tom and Marty. I think Marty's doing her hair. So she's going to be coming
30
along
seconds.
in just 30 seconds. But we're so excited to have you guys all with us. I want to share with you that we have attendees from across the planet. We've got folks who are registered for this event from as far away as Australia and as far away as Pakistan. There's Marty. Marty, your hair looks great.
Thank you.
Somebody
So what we put together for you guys is, we think, going to be a very, very meaningful, exciting, and inspirational experience for you this morning. We know there's a lot going on out there, but we're hoping that this is going to give you a little glimpse of some possibilities that maybe weren't on your radar screen. So let's go ahead and get started. So first and foremost, I want to say thank you on behalf of the whole entire team. My name is Michael Clement. I'm the principal of Architectural Resource. We're a residential design firm based in Ann Arbor, Michigan, but actually doing work all across the country and potentially all across the world now. We'll see how that plays out. And I want to introduce our two very, very special, I can't say enough about these people, guests and clients, Tom and Marty Burbeck, the owners of Burbeck at Beacon Springs Farm. Tom and Marty?
Hi.
I want to let you know that Tom and Marty are trailblazers, even in the fact that we're doing this event. We said, you know what, we were planning on doing a live version of this, and obviously things changed. And so instead, we thought, well, we can still do this, but we'll do it virtually. This entire thing has been orchestrated by myself and my team. I want to acknowledge my entire staff. I want to particularly acknowledge Austin Harrell, our architectural intern, Chloe Ferrari, our architectural intern, and Delaney Davis, our architectural intern. They've been working tirelessly. They, as well as our colleagues Gary Cade, who you'll meet later, and Kimberly Hayner, have made this possible. And I want to let you know that this could have never happened without a team, not least of which was Tom and Marty. So thank you so much for joining. Before we get started, a little bit of housekeeping. So we are not virtual meeting specialists, right? This is our first. You're getting to see the inaugural voyage here. So we're unfortunately unable to provide any technical support during this event. If for some reason you're dropped from the event, you can rejoin at any time just by putting in the meeting ID and the password provided in the original email we had sent you. And then have that handy, because there's a lot of information and you want to get right back in as quickly as you can. Just to keep things manageable, all attendees will be on mute, so you can be talking between yourselves. If you're watching with your family, your friends, you won't be interrupting anybody. There will be no chat feature available during the event, so we can keep things moving. For best results, we've done 3 dress rehearsals on this to make sure this was going to work. We are discovering that the optimal way to experience this event is on a computer. So if you're using a mobile app, you'll still be able to participate, but there will be some views that you won't be able to see. So if you want to switch over, you might want to do so now. I want to point out that I am presenting on behalf of the entire Burbeck at Beacon Springs Living Building Challenge team. I am just one component of the team that made this all possible. Additional information, contact information about the entire team is available if you go to visiblegreenhome.com, and you can find links and information about their companies. In particular, our builder colleague, Bob Burnside from Fireside Home Construction. Every attendee will be receiving a free gift from us at the end of this. This kind of sounds like a car sale, doesn't it? But we put together a brochure so that you can basically just enjoy the presentation and not be worrying about taking notes. You're going to receive a 4-page brochure that has information, data, all the technical aspects that we're going to be talking about will be given to you at the end of this event. The other thing is at the end of this event, you will be directed to a Google form so that you can submit any and all questions you might have. One of the frustrations I always have when I'm attending these events is I put a question up and it just kind of goes off into wherever and it never gets answered. Well, we are committed that we will be answering every single question that you give us. This is what the form looks like. It's very, very simple. You'll enter your name, your time zone, so we know that we don't call you at an inappropriate time, your phone number, any questions you might have, and if you happen to be interested in a consultation, you can check that box and we'll get back to you guys ASAP. This will be myself and my sustainable building colleague, Gary Cade, will be calling you directly. We're going to be giving you as much or as little time as you need to make sure that every single question will be answered. But there are over 300 people who have registered for this tour. So please be patient. It might take a little while for us to be able to get back with you. All right. Well, welcome to the virtual Beacon Springs Burbeck tour. I'm so excited to have you guys here, and we have a lot to share with. So let's get started. So here is the iconic view of the home. And why is this home significant? This home is significant because it's one of only 2 homes on the entire planet to have achieved full certified living status through the Living Building Challenge. This is a home which, as the logo suggests, basically emulates a flower. It uses only the available currency of sun energy that falls on it to exist. It's net zero energy. And we're going to show you how this house has actually been designed and is performing at net positive energy. It's net zero water. It drinks from the sky. It uses the only amount of water that falls on its immediate surrounding, and it doesn't reach down into ancient aquifers, draining what we call dinosaur water. And we're going to talk about why that's significant in this presentation. And it also generates no waste. Like a flower, it's contributing throughout its entire lifespan. So you might say, well, that's nice, but why? Why would you want to do this? I wanted to let Tom and Marty share a little bit about the story of how this project came to be and why we set out on this quest to create the world's second Living Building Challenge fully certified home. Tom and Marty?
About 8 years ago, I was getting ready for retirement from the software business where I've been an owner for many years. And we decided to buy a plot of land here just outside of Ann Arbor, Michigan, and do some farming. We're really interested in permaculture farming. There's a growing neighborhood of permaculture farmers in this area. We also wanted to do some remodeling on our other home, our current home at that time. And Michael and Architectural Resource are certainly well known, have quite a reputation in the Ann Arbor area. So Michael was the first guy we called. And in the process, he said, well, you're doing all this permaculture stuff. Do you want to build a fairly green home? And we said, sure. Doesn't everybody want to do that? And so in the process, it became clear that we shouldn't try to do much remodeling on that home. And we ended up building on the land that we were planning to do the farming on. And that's, so here we are 8 years later, after a 5-year project and a 3.5 years of living here. And here we are, couldn't be happier with it.
It was at one point, as we were talking about, do we remodel the old house? Maybe we build a cottage on this land. And Michael said, well, there is this really new and really rigorous green building standard. It's called the Living Building Challenge. Are you interested? And we did a little bit of research and we decided, sure. We didn't, any of us, know what we were getting into. But here we are and we did it and it's amazing.
Yeah, it took 5 years and a team of around 20 experts, professionals to pull this off. It was a long, exciting process. You know, it's amazing how it.
And I'll never forget the moment that Tom, we were in a planning meeting and we had folks with us. We had some folks on video chat. Before Zoom was like the thing, we had some people on video chat. And at one point, we were looking at different opportunities and constraints. And I'll never forget, Tom stood up and he said, we are either going for full Living Building Challenge certification or nothing. And by that declaration, he put in place the intent and the intention for this to happen. And there were many come close to the edge moments. But it was Tom and Marty who stayed the course and completed this project and now have this incredible home that they're going to share with you guys today. So that's Tom and Marty's story about why we might want to do this. But there are other things that we might want to look at as well. And so let's take a look at the bigger picture. So on the Apollo 11 mission, this was the first trip around the moon that we did in the Apollo program. James Lovell came around from the dark side of the moon and coming up, peering over the lunar horizon, he saw the Earth. And he described it as a grand oasis. Ironically, if they were to take that same trip today and come around on the far side of the moon, they would see a planet that now has 40% less ice. Back in 2006, the alarms were going off, and we were being invited to consider that we got something going on here. This is what we call the extent. So every year, the ice flow on the cap, the ice sheet, expands and contracts. And what we look at is what we call the minimum extent. So this was in 1984, the first time we had a satellite image of the Arctic cap. This is September 18th of 2019. And what you should also notice is not only is the extent less, but you can see that the density is reduced as well. We are projecting, climate scientists are projecting, that we will be coming upon a time that we will see the summers that have no Arctic ice. And in fact, in 2010, for the first time ever, we had the fabled Northwest Passage was open for navigation. 2019, as it turns out, was the second warmest year in 140 years of record keeping. All 10 of the highest years on record have been in the last decade. It's projected that by 2030, Glacier National Park will actually be ice-free. Dr. James Hansen, a climate scientist who was first studying the atmosphere of Venus, was looking at carbon dioxide content. And he started to think, well, I should maybe take a look at what's going on planet Earth as well. And so he looked at and understood what was 400,000 years of carbon using ice sheaves and other things to record. And they found that the carbon content in the atmosphere hovered around 280 parts per million. He has postulated that 350 parts per million is the threshold beyond which we should not go. Otherwise, we could impact the Earth in the way that it is developed and the way that we've come to understand it. What's going on is we've discovered this, I call it magic fuel, which is essentially ancient sunlight. A barrel of oil represents 11 years of manual labor. And the average American uses 60 barrels per year. We are actually in the middle of what will become known as a fleeting epoch in history, the hydrocarbon age, when we are able to access this incredible energy source. However, it does have a limited supply. But the other issue that's going on, as we all know, is the release of the carbon has been spiking. We are now looking at the first time in recorded history that we have crossed 400 parts per million. The last time planet Earth was at 400 parts per million, humans didn't even roam the face of the planet. And just checking yesterday, in fact, last night at around 11 p.m., to get the most updated data, we are currently at 415 parts per million based on the Mauna Loa Observatory. So that's the carbon program. Let's talk about another program, which is arguably going to be even more important, and that's water. 74%, fully 3/4 of the water that we consume is done by us in the residential sector. So this is a little quiz. Water, true or false, is the world's most abundant natural resource. Well, it's a little bit of a trick question. Why do I say that? Let's take a look at this. That upper chart shows water in terms of the salt water and the fresh water. You'll notice that fresh water consists of only 2.5% of the total amount of water on the planet. And if you look at the chart to the right below that, 68.9% is locked in glaciers currently, and we're doing our level best to turn that into seawater. 30% in groundwater, only 0.3% in lakes and rivers. So that's great, but what does that actually look like? Well, let's have a look. If you were to take the entire planet, and if you were to collect up all the water on its surface and make it into one large sphere, that would be this sphere number 1. That's on, in, and above the Earth. That's all the water on the planet. Sphere number 2, that smaller one, is all the liquid fresh water. Sphere number 3 is all of the fresh water in the lakes and streams. And I've got another slide here that's going to make it a little easier to see. So 1 is all the water in, on, and above the Earth. 2 is all the liquid fresh water. And 3 is all the fresh water in the lakes and the streams. So what you're realizing is, though we have this huge planet, and when we see the views from space and we see all this water, it's an infinitesimally small, thin film. Water, arguably, is going to be the most important resource as we go forward. Let's talk about what's going on with water currently. So 20 million people living in the Southwest United States depend on Lake Powell and Lake Mead for water supply and economic well-being. This is a picture from the archives of when the dam was first built, when Hoover Dam was first built. Those areas that you see, those, and here I can mark on this, these guys are the intake towers, pardon me. They're the towers through which the water is admitted to the turbines and then head on downstream. This is a recent picture of Hoover Dam. What is happening right now is the water levels are dropping so low that the city administrators are making contingency plans to route the water around the dam. We're also having, simultaneously, unusual, rapid, and synchronous warming, more than any periods in time up to 1,000 years ago. And what they're doing is they're taking core samples through the tree and looking at tree ring studies, and they're teasing out what was going on in terms of water. We have looming upon us the potential for a mega drought. This is what had led to the Dust Bowl conditions back during the 1930s. What had happened is they discovered the Ogallala Aquifer, which allowed them to irrigate the plains. That is now being drawn down below renewable levels. This was taken this past summer, June 6th, in Lubbock, Texas, where dust storms are now becoming prevalent. USA Today, just a couple of days ago, had an article, mega drought emerging in the Western US might be worse than any in 1,200 years. Unfortunately, the 20th century has been an unusually wet period of time. And that's the period of time that we've actually expanded our population into the Southwest. That's going to be a concern. And the reason is that the reason that we're able to do this irrigation is because of our access to the aquifers, but they're now being drawn out faster than they're being replenished. Let's take a look at the broader picture of the water. So as one person once said, the ocean is downhill from everywhere. So what we have done is we've managed to coat the planet with a thin film of plastic. There are now microparticles that are showing up as far north as the Arctic and in the Antarctic. And we've developed what we're calling the 8th continent. And this is the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, where there is more plastic than plankton, on average up to 30 meters thick. Essentially, a floating plastic continent. But wait, there's more. We are now looking at a rate of extinction that has seen a 58% decline since 1970. And why a lot of this is happening is the freshwater habitats are being ruined. But let's not stop at the water. What are we doing with our landfills? 30 to 35% of the landfills is construction debris. And the largest proportion is roofing. What does that mean? Well, if you were to take one of these garbage trucks and you were put it from end to end, it would stretch from New York to Los Angeles and then back again, and then far again to Chicago. And we're doing that every single year. But wait, there's more. Indoor air pollution, the homes that we're building, we spend 90% of our time indoors, and we're finding that the air quality is on occasion 100 times worse than outdoor air. 1/3 of our buildings are toxic or deficient in ventilation. I'm going to read to you a passage written by Giulio Slingo, who's the chief climate scientist at the United Kingdom's National Weather Service. And this is from a book called What the Future Looked Like. So let us fast forward to 2050. The Earth's surface temperature has passed 2 degrees Celsius, above what it was just a century earlier. And in the same period, the global sea level has risen by another foot. The Arctic is now ice-free in summer, and there have been substantial increases in its ocean temperatures. Marine mammal, fish, and bird populations are changing, and the indigenous population is increasingly compromised by lack of food security. Loss of coastal sea ice, sea level rise, and increased weather intensity are forcing relocation of some communities. The opening up of the Arctic has made it a major shipping route for international trade, and exploitation of the Arctic's natural resources is growing rapidly. New invasive species brought in by increased human activity are changing the natural ecosystems. She goes on to write, in India, pre-monsoon heat is now crippling for much of the population, especially across the northern plains. Flooding during the monsoon season is increasingly serious as daily rainfall intensities rise. Those living in low-lying coastal areas are experiencing more and more frequent incursions of seawater during storm surges as the sea levels rise. Freshwater supplies are contaminated, agricultural land is damaged, and waterborne diseases are increasingly common. Forced migration is increasingly an issue. On the positive side, air quality is improved. Across the topics, construction and maintenance of infrastructure in major towns and cities have become difficult as daytime temperatures frequently exceed thresholds where it's safe to work outside. Electricity demand for air conditioning is putting even greater and greater pressure on supplies. Several small island states, such as Kiribati in the Central Pacific Ocean, are no longer habitable because of sea level rise, with the population now stateless and with an uncertain future. In others, coral bleaching has led to the loss of sustainable fisheries on which the population depends. Tourism, which was a major part of their economies, has fallen away. Southern Australia and the Mediterranean, including the Middle East, are now in the grip of prolonged droughts and periods of extreme summer heat. Wildfires are becoming increasingly dangerous, threatening homes and urban environments and damaging natural ecosystems. Water security is becoming more and more of an issue as aquifers are depleted. In the United States, the weather is increasingly volatile with more extremes of temperature and rainfall. Summer heat waves are becoming more prevalent, and 10 of the 10 warmest years have occurred in the last 20 years. This small glimpse into what the climate of 2050 might be like is a stark reminder of why climate change will be such a determinant of our social and economic future, and of our role as custodians of the rich diversity of Earth's natural ecosystems. In all of this, it is likely that water will become the most precious commodity on the planet. So that's what she has to say, but wait, there's more. And here we are. How's everyone doing out there? So the intention here is to show you a path forward. This home, although just a home, is about more than just being a home. It's about possibility. It's about opportunity. And now in this time when all of us are becoming even more and more sensitive to the fact that we are vulnerable, we have the opportunity to build our homes in such a way to protect us around anything that the world might throw at us, whether it's climate change or contagions or what have you. This is our opportunity to share with you one version of what that might look like. So let's take a look. A living building challenge. Oh, Tom and Marty signaling. Austin, I think you've got them turned off. Can you turn them on? There
Okay,
we go.
good, we're back on.
This is very much bootstrap, by the way. So Living Building Challenge. What is Living Building Challenge? Living Building Challenge is first and foremost a philosophy. Then it's an advocacy. Finally, it's a building certification program. What it's about is imagining a future where our homes are not only good for us, protecting us, safe for us, but are also making a difference for the greater society and culture and planet. What most of the certification programs talk about is a program that's merely less bad. The Living Building Challenge program, which was born by the International Living Futures Institute, said, look, let's turn this around. We're not after less bad, we're after good. And so the question is, what exactly does good look like? Most of the time in certification programs, we're looking at reducing the negative environmental impact, which is wonderful. And then we get to this magical spot we call sustainable. Well, sustainable is terrific, but we've got some ground to make up. And sustainable, I'm trying to think about, if my marriage was sustainable, would I be happy? I'm not sure. I think it'd be better if we targeted something a little bit more ambitious. And that's what Living Building Challenge is really moving us to a place of not just sustainable, but actually regenerative, where our efforts are making the world and the planet and our lives better. It's a standard of optimism. And this is something that we could all stand right now, is an opportunity to move our vision from what's right in front of us to what could be possible in the future. This program is made up of 7 different petals. These petals are further divided into 20 imperatives. There are 2 unique features about the Living Building Challenge certification program. The first is its pass-fail. In many other programs, you're awarded points for different degrees of good. Living Building Challenge says we are only after one thing. You're either certified living or you're pedal certified or you're not. There's no half measures, there's no partial. I use the illustration that if we're driving south and we want to go to the Upper Peninsula, slowing down the car is not going to get us to the Upper Peninsula. The only way to do it is to stop and turn the car around. This program is about turning the car around. And we're going to share with you exactly what that looks like on a home such as Burbeck at Beacon Springs. There we go. So when we started to put this together, I said, Tom and Marty, I have so much respect for you and what you've done here and your aspirations for this home. Would you mind sharing with me, like, what this meant for you, what this is all about for you? And so they wrote this, and I'm just going to read through it real quickly. Life starts for each of us in a world already underway, a world with a shape crying out for better shaping. And each of us has the capacity to respond to that call. Burbeck at Beacon Springs Farm is our opportunity and our response. A vision offered to shape a better world for generations to come. This is their story. So let's take a look at the Living Building Challenge certification. This project received certification on December 14th of 2017, but it wasn't until after it met the other requirement for Living Building Challenge. The first, as I mentioned, is its pass-fail. The second is it must go through a full year of performance. It's not about projected. It's not about what we think is going to happen. It's not about model. It's about, does this actually deliver on the promise? And this project met every single criteria except for the one, which was car-free living, because of what is called the transect. Because of this being a farm, they did recognize that we would potentially need to use a vehicular moving of product to market and back and forth. So this is the second only residence on the entire planet to achieve Living Building certification. So we're now going to shift the focus and we're going to start talking a little bit more about the specifics of the home. So as you're seeing this image, the residence is located here to the left towards the south. There's a colonnade that connects the house to a detached garage, barn, farm utility building. And then you can see the surrounding areas. We're talking about the house aspect of this, but this is actually the center of a permaculture farm that I'd like to have Marty share a little bit about permaculture, because permaculture is essentially what we did with the house is what Tom and Marty are doing with the land.
When we bought this property, and still the land had been used for monoculture farming, rows of corn, rows of soybeans, and that had happened for maybe 100 years, and the land was worn out, used up. It's just clay soil. And so permaculture starts with building the soil, because unless there's life in the soil, there's no life in the plants. So what we have done, and I think you can see to the north of the barn, maybe Michael, you can see those contours. We've done a lot of shaping there to the north of the barn and now to the southeast of the house, building berms with a swale uphill. Plant on the berm, on the bump, and the swale just uphill collects water as it falls from the sky and irrigates the plants on the berm. In addition to managing the water for irrigation, we're also are just covering the ground with ground cover it with plants. because that's another way of building life into the soil. And then finally, it's the, well, in gardening, it's called companion planting. So you put your basil with your tomatoes because they work together well, and they ward off pests in a good way. And so that's a big part of permaculture farming as well.
Permaculture is, as I mentioned, kind of the ecological aspect of farming, pairing up with the ecological aspect of this home. And what's so exciting is that Tom and Marty are right in the middle of developing this. And so every year it gets a little further, a little further, a little further. Like most things that are worthwhile, it takes a little time to get there. And it's so exciting to see the steady progress that you guys are making on this. It's just fascinating.
We have 60 fruit trees planted so far, many blueberry bushes. We have 17 swale berm combinations, and these average about 125 feet long each and take major moving dirt around. And about to plant another 20 trees.
Oh, yeah.
You guys, this is how you're staying young and healthy, I can tell.
Yeah. Real retirement, right?
All right. So here are some of the data. And again, as I mentioned earlier, everyone who's attending this event will get a copy of our brochure showing you all this data. So breaking this down, the original site acreage was 15 acres. Tom and Marty have subsequently acquired some additional acreage to augment the farming operation they're doing. The house itself, finished square foot, is roughly 3,400 square feet. Unfinished is 1,500. So the total conditioned space is down right around 4,900 square feet. The garage finished space, which by the way, the garage has been designed to also serve as a meeting space for community gatherings so that Tom and Marty and Burbeck at Beacon Springs Farm can be a harbinger of new thinking. So this has all been thinking with community in mind. Unfinished space, 1767, roughly 2,400 square feet total. We're going to talk more about the R values, but the slab is R30, the basement wall is at R30, the above grade wall R48, roof R68. And then the rest of the stuff I'm going to let you guys take a look at when we send you that brochure after, because we have a lot we want to get through. All right, so moving on. Here is the aerial view of the site. And one of the things that we did, I mentioned earlier our colleague Bob Burnside from Fireside Home Construction. I also want to mention Shannon Gig Randall from Insight Design. This cohesive team that we assembled early on started with evaluating the existing site. One of the things that Shannon brought was the recognition is that we had a very special hawthorn tree, which is quite rare and auspicious, located at that spot where I just drew the circle. That helped us design and work around that as the courtyard. The other thing we did as the architects is we did a solar analysis so we could understand how the sun was going to see the property. The garage workshop barn was oriented on a due north-south solar east-west axis. The house was canted off to an angle to take advantage of the preferred views. So what we always tell people is sustainability starts from the outside in and then generates from the inside out. So here is an image of the house from above. And you can see the detached garage, barn workshop, and the principal structure here. And this is the area where we put our 16 kW solar array. And then the house is oriented again to take advantage of the different views. So let's continue our tour and walk around the house. So this is the view from the southeast. And then we spin around the view from the southwest. The house is essentially a ranch.
Let me just
walk out lower level.
So you can see that one of the big berms that goes really across the center of the picture there. Yeah, that's a berm. You're looking at the bottom side of the berm. On the upside of that, after a big rainstorm, there'll be a big long puddle in there, 6 inches deep and 150 feet long. Go ahead, Mike.
And this is a view from the northwest. And you can see in kind of traditional barn sense, we have utility space underneath, and we have access at grade level to both upper and lower level of the barn utility space. And then this is a view from the northeast, looking back towards the house. And there you can see that hawthorn tree, which thanks to Shannon was noted and became a strong feature. In fact, when we first started the project and we had a groundbreaking, Marty had prayer cloths that we all tied onto the branches as we began with the first step towards creating a Living Building Challenge project. It was just really a wonderful experience. All right, so let's take a look at the plan. Now, how we're going to do this, just so you guys know who are visiting us, we're going to use the plan as a reference, and Tom and Marty are going to literally walk around the home and take you with them. And our intention is that by having this multiple media presentation, images, live camera, notation, you're going to get actually a better experience than if we were there in person. So Tom and Marty began this event here in the kitchen, and now they're walking around through the main part of the house, and we're going to take you right to the entry area, the airlock entry vestibule.
No.
Okay, so this is showing the picture on the main screen. By the way, you can make the different images bigger or smaller on your screen. So if you want to make Tom and Marty larger, you can do that. This is the airlock. This has been designed as an energy management device. And you know what? It's like everything old is new again, right? Airlocks and entry vestibules have been around for a long, long time. But what we're finding is in this environment that we're in, airlocks and entry vestibules also serve another feature. They serve as an opportunity for us to have a decontamination zone. Marty, do you want to share a little bit about how you guys have been using that in the current climate we're in to keep yourselves safe at home?
Well, an interesting part of designing this house was thinking through a lot of different, in particular, family configurations. But as it has turned out in this coronavirus time, we also have some opportunities in the way the house is built to protect ourselves. So when we come in, here we have our little stash of masks and bandana and gloves. And when we leave the house, we put our protective things on. When we come in, we take them off. And actually, usually there's a bottle of hydrogen peroxide here and a rag. We wash ourselves off, or hand sanitizer, wash off packages, leave them out here for a while. So it works for a lot of different things.
What's neat about our house is that we have designed things that we never anticipated would be coming into use for a contagion outbreak. But as it turns out, that's exactly what we did, and it's working out beautifully. Now, Tom and Marty are now going to move from there into another area of the house. But before we do, I want to point out something else. And that is that certain types of metals actually have antiseptic, antimicrobial, antiviral aspects. And you're going to notice that the oil rub bronze hardware, which is the thing you touch, and we're going to be going into the powder room. Tom corrected me this morning, I was saying powder bath in our dry run. The powder room, there is no bathtub in that, has a copper sink as well. So let's take a look. So Tom and Marty are now moving from the entry vestibule through the long hallway, and they're going to peer into this really incredible powder room. And Tom, do you want to say a few things about that sink?
Yeah, this is an old sycamore tree that needed to be taken down in our old neighborhood from a neighbor. And we saw the chance, I saw a chance to make this pedestal out of it. This was about halfway up the tree. It was quite a large tree. So this was one of my projects on the house.
And what's neat about that too, is that sink, as we pointed out, is a hammered copper sink. Copper is also one of the metals that have antibacterial, antimicrobial aspects built right into them. So this is a way that if you're thinking about building a safe house for who knows what the future might hold, that might be something that you will be looking at. And now Tom and Marty are going to move into the farm study office. This is the center of operations of Burbeck at Beacon Springs Farm. And Tom, I know, because I know Tom quite well, spends a fair amount of time at that table right there. And Tom, do you want to point out a few features outside the window for our guests?
Yeah. So now a farmer, you know, either I'm in here or I'm outside. It's actually quite interesting during the lockdown period, where actually I don't experience it that much because I would normally be doing these things every day. I work very much on the farm, at the farm, in the house of the farm. So if you look out there, you can see this is our terrace. Here.
Yeah, you go ahead. You hold it.
Got it. So this is a terrace out the southern side of the house. You don't see it in the pictures that Michael has because it's fairly recent. We've got two huge umbrellas, a 16-foot umbrella over there, and then the arbor. See the arbor ringing the terrace. There's under that arbor is our kitchen garden, and growing on the arbor are grapes. And I just now underway with the pruning the grapes for the coming season. On that. And what you see out here in terms of that field in front of us from here down to the big row of trees down there, that's one day, hopefully that will have sheep grazing on it. That's one of the things that we want to do as part of this whole project. Michael?
And Tom, can you pan to the left or maybe take a view out of the farm office door and talk about the swales and the ducks?
Yeah. So first of all, the water that's in this pond, can you see that? It's a lot of glare and I can't really see too well.
We can, it looks great.
Okay. So that water just all drains down from where I'm pointing the camera right now, which is just the top of the hill. It keeps this pond completely full and it has an overflow then. And you can see here the most recent set of berms and swales that I've been working on. We're trying to get those. You see some chips put on. Those were just put on yesterday. We have a farm hand who helps out, and we stay appropriately distanced from when he comes and doesn't come in the house. But anyway, this is meant to actually control tremendous amount of erosion that was
Okay. So Tom and Marty have fallen away. This is the first time we ventured outside the house, so we took a little bit of a chance here.
the
So
land.
they're going to come.
Because these
They'll come back in just a second, and when they come back in, they'll pick up where we are. So we're going to move from the farm office to talking about the energy management system for this home. So basically, there are 3 steps to net zero energy. The first is what we call conservation. The second is what we call utilization. The third is what we call generation. C-U-G, CUG. I always share that with our audiences. Conservation, use as little energy as you can. Lose as little energy as you can. Utilization, use as little energy as you can. And then finally, generation, make as much energy as you can. Energy wants to be considered in those 3 steps, conservation being the most important. I always use the illustration of a glass of water. The water inside that glass is the energy inside your home. Obviously, if there's a hole in the glass, we want to make sure we plug that out. In this house at Burbeck at Beacon Springs, we have an R30 insulation underneath the slab. In the basement walls, we have R30. We have R48 above grade walls and R68 roof. We worked with an energy modeler, Mike Holcomb and Alex Babich, to use the REM-rate software to model the energy performance of this home. You'll notice here that we are looking at a HERS score of -11. As far as our two energy moderators knew, that had never been achieved in at least their area of territory, which is essentially the Midwest. And the reason we did that is we wanted to make sure that we were going to have adequate energy so that this house would be net positive at the end of the day. This is a construction drawing cut through the house, and you can see the insulation under the slab and coming up the perimeter walls. We use structural insulated panels as our insulation for the roof, and I'm going to share with you in more detail how the different assemblies played out. But before we do that, I want to tip our hats to someone who's made a huge difference in our world, not just architectural resource, but the building community, and that's Joe Stebrick of Building Science from Westford, Mass. We have been educated by him over the years to understand that a wall actually has 4 control layers, and these 4 control layers want to be considered in this sequence: water, air, vapor, and thermal. And they put forward the idea of what they're calling the perfect wall. And essentially, it involves something called CI, which is continuous insulation. And by that, what we mean is that we have our basic structural wall and we have cavity insulation there. But what's really doing the greatest amount of work for us is the insulation that's on the outside, because that wraps around and defeats all thermal bridging and potentially air leakage paths as well. And why is that important? Well, if you don't understand what you're doing when you're designing a high-performance home, you can run into some issues. These are not thoroughly understand vapor drive and the potential building failure paths. So what we have done is designed a wall, which we're calling it our super perfect wall. This is the wall to the south, the north of the house that has a brick veneer, and this is the wall to the south of the house that has a stucco finish. In both of these cases, we are using what's called a drainage cavity. And in this case, it's a pressure equalizing drainage cavity. And then outboard of the framing elements of the wall, we have 2 layers of staggered and offset insulation that provide for us the continual insulation that we need. We also wanted to be careful to make sure that we had good performance. So we worked with our colleagues at Dow Building Solutions, and they ran what's called a WUFI, W-U-F-I, hydrothermal analysis. And what we see here is the hydration of the wall starting out wet, because all buildings start out wet, but then it trends towards drying over time. And that's important because we found that if walls get wet, that we have moisture and mold in the walls, which leads to rot and mildew and building decay and dead clients, which we understand is bad for business. So we try to avoid that whenever we can. This is the assembly we did for the roof. In this case, we have, again, 2 layers of continuous insulation. We have what's called a nail base and a SIP standard base. And so these layers of insulation provided us the insulation plane for the roof. Now you'll notice in this case, the moisture content goes up. That's because moist air is more buoyant than dry air. So over time, moisture is going to migrate through. But what we like is we're seeing this leveling off and flattening out. So we can be confident that Tom and Marty won't be dead clients, which again, good for business.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, we do our best. So now Tom and Marty are going to move from the farm office into the main space, the main family room space. And in this space, we're going to talk about passive energy. So when we think about energy generation, a lot of times, most of our thoughts first go right to, well, let's add some solar panels. Solar panels are fabulous. They're a key component of this house's energy performance. But it is, however, the very last thing that we look at. We look at conservation first, utilization second, and generation third. This is a picture of the house during construction, showing the passive thermal energy. And why? Well, because the actual ultimate source of all energy is the sun, and the sun doesn't send a bill. So if we can harvest our wagon to that, we win. And this is how we're doing this in this case. In the summer, the sun has a high altitude, which means that if we have properly tuned overhangs, we can block off that summer sun. In the winter, the sun is lower in the sky, and it actually penetrates underneath the overhang. So by doing that, we're able to take advantage of free energy, which has no moving parts. And this is a drawing, a photo of the house showing that sunlight streaming through. And here's a different view. And here's a different view yet. Now, apparently the dogs are pretty excited about it, right? So do we know this works? Well, we know absolutely it works, but we had a chance to test drive it this past winter when we experienced the polar vortex, when the city of Ann Arbor saw temperatures drop to minus 16 degrees. And I'll never forget, I got this text from Marti, and I thought I'd let her share the story with you.
Well, Michael, it wasn't just that one day, but that was an extreme example of what happens here in the wintertime, and the sun is streaming in. It's a sunny day. It can be negative 16 outside, and it gets warm. And so we open
Warm inside.
So we open the windows. And what an amazing experience of being inside in a warm space and knowing that it's bitter cold outside and we have fresh air coming in. It's an amazing thing.
All heated by the sun. No geothermal running at that point. It's just
right. I think the
heat.
Geothermal would be off because it's hot
warm,
enough
yeah.
warm enough from the sun.
I remember Marti sent me this image that I'm showing you, which was their indoor temperature set point. It was 3 degrees outside, 68 degrees inside set point. But the actual temperature inside the house was 76 degrees. And so they had it like, it was a little bit warmer than they liked, so they just cracked open a window and they had fresh outside air coming in, and there was no added energy necessary. That's what passive solar can do. Thank you, Marti. Now, Tom and Marti are going to move, from that same space that they're in now back to the front entry area. So we showed you that airlock, and we talked about how it served as an energy management device, and how it also served as a decontamination zone for the house. But this airlock is providing another benefit. Warm air is more buoyant than cold air. We're going to use that and what's called the Venturi effect to passively cool this house. We're passively heating it with energy from the sun. We're going to be passively cooling it with physics and wind. So what is happening is this 40-foot tall tower, if you can notice the floors are metal grates. They have been designed that way to allow air to move through them. So how the strategy works is we open up the windows on the windward side of the house. Fresh, cool air comes into the house. It pushes the hot, stale air to the rear of the house where this tower is located. The tower has been positioned at an angle that takes advantage of the prevailing breezes to allow it to act as an exhaust duct. We worked with the College of Engineering at University of Michigan's Blue Lab and did computational fluid dynamic studies. This allowed us to determine the optimal height for the tower and its orientation. And what we discovered is that when in operation, the tower was providing a greater volume of airflow than the mechanical system set on high. And the best part about it is it had no moving parts, no required added energy at all. So Tom and Marty are now going to move from the cooling tower, I'm sorry, the entry vestibule.
Simply going to say where I stand here, it can be in the 90s outside and fairly still. And there's a breeze that just comes through here on those hot summer days. There's always breeze.
In fact, Tom and Marty, how often do you turn on the air conditioner?
No, we don't use it. We just use it if it's a special dinner party or something where people are all dressed up. Or tours. We've turned it on for tours before in the middle of the summer because people like cooler air than the 80 degrees or so that we can get to be in here.
I think we've probably had it on 5 days each year that we've been here.
Yeah.
Wow, that's incredible. So Tom and Marty, move into the kitchen, and we're going to talk about the kitchen a little bit. Okay, so we are now at the center of the home, and truly, literally, a farm kitchen. And one of the aspects of this kitchen is it's at the center of the house, but it has this really wonderful feature. Part of the imperatives for Living Building Challenge certification is that all spaces have access to natural light. And what you'll notice here is the sink has been strategically placed such that it has a view to a view. It looks across the hallway to the window that's on the outside. So that lets borrow light and access to natural light come into the space. The other thing about this kitchen is it has an induction range. When we're designing a high performance home, we always invite folks to take a look at having an all electric house because that would be renewable energy. The other aspect about this kitchen, which is particularly relevant now, is again the use of copper as a material to help keep things clean, safe, and sanitized. We had no idea that we'd be facing a contagion outbreak, but as it turns out, having a copper sink like this makes a big difference in the same thing with the oil rug bronze hardware. Now, Tom and Marty, let's go ahead and continue and move from the kitchen into Marty's study. This house, although it's currently housing just Tom and Marty, has been designed using a sustainable concept that we call long life, loose fit. And the idea is that if you're going to build with the idea of how that might serve others after you. And so Tom and Marty have designed this house. So this could accommodate a family, it could accommodate aging parents, it could accommodate extended generational families. This really has been designed to serve for a long, long time. The house has been designed to last 200 years. And so we have no idea how the use patterns are going to change. But the idea here is that we're thinking about that. Now, there's something that's unique about this space, and that is this area to the right of Marty's desk. That area is a part of our energy harvesting system. And Tom and Marty, let's move next to the master bedroom.
Okay.
So we're moving now from Marty's study through the dressing hall, and we're landing at the master bedroom space. The master bedroom has been designed using a concept that we call the bed chamber. By that, what we mean is that for many families, particularly now, the house that's under great use finds that there's often an opportunity that someone might want to sleep in a little later, get up a little earlier, and it's been designed to allow who's ever inside the bedroom to have quiet and not be interrupted. And then the other partner can be using the closet, using the dressing area, and using the bathroom without having to interrupt that space. Well, as it turns out, that's also a very awesome way to be able to compartmentalize if someone happens to have a contagion. They can be held in that space This can be used as a quarantine transition zone. And this would allow them to adequately manage whatever might come down the pipe. This is a view of the master bedroom. And this area to the left of the large window is a continuity of the area that's to the right of that space where Marty's study is. That is what we call a trom wall, Trombe. And I'm going to take you to the outside. So Tom is currently standing right there. Marty's study is right here. There's a dividing wall that separates. This is a device that's harvesting energy. You'll notice that there's windows there, but you're not seeing glass on the other side. How a trom wall works is essentially how greenhouse gases work. Energy comes in, it goes through the exterior plane of glass, and then it incidences against a masonry wall. In this case, we used a 8-inch thick masonry wall. That heat energy builds up in that wall, and there is a selective soak coating on the surface of that wall that lets 95% of the energy to radiate inward, and only 5% is re-radiated outward. What that does is allow the heat energy to accumulate in that wall. So what ends up happening is, lo and behold, on towards 10 o'clock at night, that heat energy has slowly made its way across the wall, and then it starts radiating into the interior space. And Tom, can you rap on that wall so folks can feel what's going on? Oh, can't quite hear it, Tom. Yeah, we're not hearing it, but that's okay.
Okay.
In person.
Here. And not
Oh, there we go. We can hear that. That made a difference. Tom, do you want to share with us when you had your laser thermometer out?
Yeah, so we periodically check this on very cold and clear days. So you need a real clear day for the sun to be shining strong on the outside of the trom walls. And by about 5 or 6,
8 or 9, I don't know.
5 or 6 in the afternoon, we will get temperature readings on this wall behind the concrete here of 95 degrees or more. And it stays that way. It's still warm in the morning, maybe down to 80 degrees by the time you get to, 6 a.m. or so.
Awesome.
It really works.
All right, now we're going to move from this space and take a look at the dressing area. So this is just walking outside of Tom and Marty's bedroom. And this is that central dressing area that allows us to have the bed chamber concept that we were talking about. This, as it turns out, is also a wonderful space to maintain in case someone was to become ill with any type of contagion. They could be isolated in that space, and we could be using the closet and the bathroom without having any interference. Now we're going to take a look at the master bathroom. So the master bathroom has been designed with something we call aging in place concepts. The idea is making sure that Tom and Marty can live in this house for the duration of the journey. This is a view looking back towards the shower. The shower has been designed in such a fashion that if we wanted to, we could remove that glass partition, we could put a wraparound curtain, and we have what's called a roll across threshold, so that we have no impediment to any type of a mobility device. Tucked around the corner is the water closet. Now, it seems as though the topic of the day is personal hygiene when it comes to using the toilet. One of the things that we've done here is put in, as a future-ready strategy, an outlet that's to the side of the toilet. And that is to allow us to, if in the future, or even if right now, we wanted to convert this to a powered bidet toilet seat, we could do that without having to do any additional work on the house. So we're going to move now.
Michael, you might want to mention, we could also get rid of this cabinet, and then it's easy access for a wheelchair to the toilet.
Yes, exactly. Thank you. So that's been placed there as a temporary privacy partition, and that can be easily moved. So we're going to move from here, and we're going to head down to the basement, to the lower level of the house. So coming down these stairs, we have the mud laundry utility room. We have a powder bath, and then we have 2 additional bedrooms in the lower level. The bedroom in the lower left-hand corner is going to give us access to a view of something that we think you're going to find fairly exciting. This house has been designed with 3 2,500-gallon cisterns. And Tom is showing you out the window there where the caps are. The access caps are for maintaining the tanks. These tanks were delivered and buried and then are hooked up in a series. Once filled with water, these would provide domestic water for fully 3 months of supply when full. This is showing how the debris is handled through a vortex unit that spins the water and the debris separately so that we can contain as much debris before it gets into the tank as possible. Now, I should mention that although those tanks are there, we are not actually able to use that because of building code for potable water. So we're going to move from this space into the mechanical area. So as Tom and Marty come around the corner, on the right, you're going to see the geothermal heating and cooling system. This system provides not only domestic heating, but it also provides domestic hot water through something called a de-superheater. Now, as a brief overview on geothermal heating and cooling, for those of you who are not familiar, essentially it's exchanging heat energy with the earth. In the summertime, it's putting heat energy into the earth. In the wintertime, it's taking heat energy from the earth through a closed loop, which is a horizontal loop in Tom and Marty's case. And why geothermal is considered an effective way to heat is rather than using the energy resource to heat, it's actually using ground energy and then only adding a small amount of energy that would then allow it to be compressed and generated at a 100% delivery temperature. So the idea is rather than using the energy source to generate the heat, we use the energy source to multiply the heat. This then is showing the distribution panel for the in-floor radiant heat. This house has a concrete slab on top of a wood deck that has radiant tubes in it for radiant heat throughout the house. It also has forced air heating and cooling. The heating component is used for the swing seasons when there's a temperature lag in terms of the response rate of the in-floor heat. And the cooling, although Tom and Marty have just mentioned, rarely used, is obviously forced air cooling.
So
Now,
during the winter, we just don't have any forced air heating. It's all radiant floor heating, and it's very quiet. It's quite an amazing experience. It's also heating through what's it called, radiant heat. It's a very comfortable environment in the winter.
Radiant heat, for those of you who have ever experienced in-floor radiant heat, is absolutely phenomenal because rather than heating the space, it actually is heating the objects in the space, including you. The other thing that we're showing you here is something called the energy recovery ventilator, and it's what we refer to as the lungs of the building. We build a house that's very, very tight. We reduce the air leakage so that we're not having energy loss through the building envelope. But at the same time, we have to ventilate the house. So an energy recovery ventilator works in a fashion to allow inside air to escape to the outside and outside air to be brought into the inside. These two air streams would pass one another, yet not touch one another. And in so doing, they're able to exchange energy and moisture so that you're essentially keeping the same conditions inside and out, yet still having fresh air. So it's kind of like having a window open with no energy penalty whatsoever. Now, Tom and Marty are going to carefully walk down to the sub-basement.
Yeah.
This is going to the space that we call the plumbing pit. The plumbing pit was a hard thought through decision as we were working to put together the plumbing and the fresh water and potable water and domestic use water program. And as you can see from the drawings, we have quite a sizable drop in elevation. And the reason we did that is because we wanted to set this house up so that it could use gravity flow to take care of all of the waste that might be coming from toilets or sinks or bathroom groups. And we have a bathroom group over here, and we want to have adequate flow to this area, to our centralized located composting unit called an aquatron. So this is the plumbing pit. This is our domestic hot water, and then this is our water filtration system. And Tom is standing by the water filtration system right now. Tom, if you can point to the canisters. So the canister to Tom's, there it is. That's a sediment filter. Then we have a carbon filter. And then immediately adjacent to that, we have a UV sterilization chamber. This is taking water that comes from the 3 2,500-gallon cisterns and bringing it through essentially our own water treatment plant. This water, although Marty and Tom have had tested, and is, Marty, can you, or Tom, can you speak to how that water testing showed up compared to the well water?
It's far more pure. I don't know any numbers to put to it, but if it measures 5 quantities, then the well system would be, you know, up at 70 quantities. I mean, it's incredibly more pure than it's really a lot of minerals and so on. In
Right.
well
So we had the rainwater tested when we started, you know, tried it out. And so if the scale is 1 to 10 for minerals in the water, the 10 different things that we tested for, 10 being a lot and 0 being nothing in the water, all of our tests came back at 1 or less than 1. So there's nothing in the water, it's just pure.
And because of the current building code situation, unfortunately, we're only able to use this for outside hydrants. And so we kind of always joke that at Tom and Marty's house, the plants are drinking better water than Tom and Marty.
That's right, that's right.
We also use a structured plumbing system to send a recirculating loop to be able to deliver hot water rapidly around the house. Now, I'm showing you a diagram that shows our plumbing strategy for the net zero waste. So over in the corner where Marty is standing is where we are anticipating having something called an aquatron. And this is a 3-chamber composting unit that would be able to take the solids and the liquids and separate them in such a fashion that the solids could be collected and generate several 3 to 4 pails, 5-gallon pails of solid material after they go through the composting cycle that could be spread on the land. And then the yellow would be separated actually at the toilets using a device called a doubleton that would then send the yellow, if you will, to a storage tank located to the south of the home that would provide diluted 1 parts to 10 irrigation and fertilization for the plan for garden. Unfortunately, the aquatron although is being used in some locations in the United States and has been used for over 50 years in Europe, was not allowed. So with this project, because we were on a well and a septic, we were able to at least meet the intent of the code and keep also the folks at International Living Futures Institute happy, because we have a closed loop ecology, but Tom and Marty are interested in going even further, and when the code is adjusted, which we hope it will be, they can then advance forward and install those devices. Now we're going to come up out of the plumbing pit, and we're going to take a very quick stop in the root cellar. So this is the space that's beneath the tower. Because Tom and Marty's home is the center of farm operations, we are planning on using this root cellar extensively. But as it turns out, if you happen to be in a situation where you might want to store food and perishables for an extended period of time, here you go. Root cellars are the way to go.
No insulation on the outside?
Yeah, so this was designed different than the balance of the house, so there's no insulation on the outside of this at all. So come back up, Tom and Marty, and then let's head over to the far side of the unfinished basement, and we're going to take a look at the business end of our solar array. These are showing the solar inverters, and what these basically do is take the DC power that's generated by the solar panels and convert it into AC power. That allows the whole house to be basically run by the sun. And as Tom and Marty make their way back upstairs, I'm going to share with you, this is what we're doing with the power. So as I mentioned earlier, we have an excess of power. We have more than what we need to power the house. And so Tom and Marty are also powering currently an electric vehicle. Tom has always been very diligent about keeping records and monitoring the inflow and the outflow of the energy to the house. What we're discovering is that on average, we have 3,500 kWh per year that is the net positive energy. So this house is meeting the intention of the certification program, wherein that is not just sustainable, net zero, it's actually net positive. Now, you might be thinking, all right, this is great, love all this stuff, but how much does something like this cost? And how can I possibly ever aspire to something like this? One of the things that we find is that the aspects and attributes of what we're sharing with you here can be applied at different degrees to anyone's living situation, whether new, remodel, or addition. What we typically find is to move to a net zero home, you would be looking at anywhere from 10 to 20% increase in cost if you're also going for a level of certification. Now, obviously what Tom and Marty have done here is a much farther reach than any home, except for one other home out in Bend, Oregon, has ever achieved. So what they were after is proof of concept and a legacy project and creating a bright shining beacon for what's possible for all of us to achieve. Whether we go this far or go part of the way, the whole idea is to see what could be possible. We know what we're doing with standard construction, and that's given us exactly what we've got. This is an opportunity to take a look beyond that, to see what else could be out there. And Tom and Marty, we'd love to hear from you a little bit about what it's like to live in a Living Building Challenge home.
The starting place for what I really love about this home is the passive energy part. And you say, what is that? Well, part of the passive energy part is a lot of thermal mass. Absorb the heat, hold the heat. But an interesting byproduct is the house is quiet. It's insulated from outside noise, which here on a farm is not such a big deal, but other places it is. It is also just a quiet building. It's still, it's serene, it's calming, it's grounding, and I love that. And it comes from the actual house design. It wasn't something we thought about, well, let's make a quiet building. We'll make an well-insulated building, and there's a wonderful byproduct.
So some reflections for me. I'm nearly 70 now and have had 70 years to think about what's important in life and all that sort of stuff. And in this project, realized how motivated I am to shape something better, to make things work better, to do something rather than just exist with the environment that's around me. And in the process of doing that, it feels like a weight has lifted, and I call that weight ownership. We so, in our current culture in America today, we're so oriented to owning things, to have something be mine. And in the process, the 5 years we went through in this project, and then the 3 years since we moved in, I've come to experience living here as living in just this wonderful place that I don't even own, that we don't own. The amazing experience is living in something that we've been able to contribute to, that then others are going to be able to both learn from and physically live here. And is really an awesome experience, sort of a major transformation for me over the last 8 years.
And it's been an amazing transformation for all of us to be able to join you in that vision and that journey. And I'm going to have my colleague, Gary Cade, our sustainable building colleague, join us in just a second here and share with you some of his thoughts and his perspective of being kind of on the building side of this effort. And there he is. Go right ahead, Gary.
Thank you. So if you're like me, you've been getting really intimately related with your home these past few weeks. In fact, not only a place to be, but really a place of refuge. And it's also been an opportunity to really take a look at what is important in life. Now, a green home, healthy home, isn't just reducing water usage, cutting greenhouse emissions, chopping utility bills, but it really is the opportunity to provide a healthy, safe sanctuary for your family and actually a better future for our planet. Now, I've been a builder closing on 40 years, and we as a group are very slow to innovate. In fact, I created a phrase that kind of sums it all up. What we've been building are what I call BNO, brand new and obsolete homes. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, think about it. What we're doing is building brand new, obsolete homes. It's a shame. Now, on the other hand, Michael is a visionary, and what he is up to is creating homes of the future today. Homes of the future today. His experience, proven technologies, and really outstanding team are focused on turning your dreams into reality and at your budget. And I think that's the key, at your budget. So don't
whatever
be
that ends up being. Yeah. Whatever
so
that
don't
ends
be
up
stopped by money, location, or time. In fact, as we're seeing today, location-wise, you could be anywhere in the world. And time-wise, there is no better time as we're staying at home to take action and turn those dreams, pursue those dreams, turn them into reality. And we have found that it's really best actually to start planning 1 to 3 years before the actual construction. The more planning, the better the outcome. So Michael, for all of you who've been on the call today, is generously offering a free consultation. And at the end of, as we close the event, there'll be a form where you can actually ask a question and also check the box to request a free consultation.
Thank you, Gary.
Michael, to turn back to you.
Yeah, thank you so much. So let's just take a look at what's going on, right? We've got a situation here which is providing us a possibility to look into new opportunities. This is skies above China as taken from the ESA satellite showing pollution levels in 2019 and where they are right now. This is, as one of the writers from the Wall Street Journal in an article that just came out yesterday, an unplanned grand experiment. That's the before and that's the after. This is Venice before and Venice after. This is normal, what we've all become accustomed to, and this is possible. We've been able to see what the planet has the capacity to do if we just give it a chance. And like Gary and Tom and Marty have shared, this is really what Burbeck at Beacon Springs is all about. And when we're faced an opportunity like this, where we're literally looking at a shift, because I'm sure for you, I know for me and my family, that we're looking at things through different eyes now. We've been given an opportunity to reassess, reevaluate, and arguably when things are at their very worst, that this is the opportunity for real and positive change. In small steps, in big steps, who knows, but taking action is the thing. So again, as we complete our presentation, every single one of you will receive a digital brochure that we'll send to you. You're also, as soon as this event is ended, you'll have a Google form link that looks like this, where you can include your name, your phone number, any questions you might have, and if you happen to be interested in having us help you create something for yourselves, whether a living building challenge or just merely better, we'd be very happy to do that. And Gary and I will be calling you. And it might take a couple days, but every single one of you, we will personally respond and answer all the questions you might have. So with that, we're going to complete this presentation. We can't thank you enough for joining us. And our hats are off particularly to Tom and Marty for sharing Burbeck at Beacon Springs Farm with all of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.